Welcome to the NFL Pick Show, the odds and the overs. I'm your host, Hodo, and we are into week 2 of the NFL. Week 1 was very exciting. Lots of stuff we discovered about a lot of teams. We're going to talk about some of that stuff here in the very beginning before we get to the picks and the odds. So, top story this week, the Chiefs, who opened up on Thursday night, unable to move the ball. Their offense looked pretty stagnant as they were not able to overcome the Detroit Lions. They didn't have a receiver that could catch a ball, honestly. Patrick Mahomes was going in there helpless and had to depend on his running game, but his receivers gave him no help whatsoever. The tight end Travis Kelce was unable to play. They actually sat him. He was insisting on playing in week 1, but they made sure that he was going to be good, at least maybe for week 2. He's still unsure on whether or not he's actually going to start or even play against the Jacksonville Jaguars. But the Chiefs take a step back in their defense of the Super Bowl title. They're going to have to be able to sort of bounce back here this week, and getting Travis Kelce back would be huge, as they don't want to go into in the NFC West. The Dallas Cowboys looking like they are the team to beat in the NFC, crushing the Giants 40-0. This game was over by halftime, and I don't know what the Giants were thinking, but it seemed like they just didn't know that they had a football game that afternoon, so that was pretty crazy for them. It was 26-0 at halftime, and then they just continued to wail on them. They were playing in a monsoon at some point during that game, but that's no excuse. Giants fans who were laughing at Kadarius Toney, the wide receiver for the Kansas City Chiefs, got a little bit of revenge back because they did not do anything at all. Nothing productive from their offense, and they left Daniel Jones in play through that entire game. So you even had people from the Dallas Cowboys not understanding why the Giants left their quarterback in. But at 40-0 by the end of it, it was just just one-way stomp from the Cowboys. And then the 49ers go into Pittsburgh and crush the Pittsburgh Steelers 30-0. 49ers look good. They got a really stout defense. They just paid one of their guys, their defensive end, $197 million, 122 of which was guaranteed. So they're looking good this year. They don't even have to pay McCaffrey. I think they have about 30 to 40 million under the cap. It's their next year where their cap looks really, really ugly, as some incentives kick in for some players, as well as pay raises. So they're going to have to do some restructuring. So if there's any year that the 49ers are going to go for the Super Bowl, this is going to be it. So week 1, very, very fortuitous for those 3 teams, the Detroit Lions, the Cowboys, and the 49ers. As we go into the results here for week 1, you see that Detroit 21-20 over Kansas City. Kansas City were home favorites in that game, weren't able to cover it all. You got Atlanta beating Carolina 24-10. Baltimore, the biggest favorites of the night, 9.5 point favorites over Houston. They crush them 25-9. They lose J.K. Dobbins at the same time. So you fantasy players out there, start looking for a running back, because they're going running back by committee there in Baltimore, because they really don't have an option. Dobbins was their all-in, and then unfortunately he tore his Achilles, and that was it. So Cleveland over Cincinnati in a shocker, 24-3. Cincinnati didn't show up. Joe Burrow, getting a massive amount of money, decides to celebrate it by not playing football. Not exactly sure what happened there. He got pulled by the fourth quarter, and the backup was in, but Cleveland had it all the way. They were in control the entire game. Jacksonville over Indianapolis, 31-24. Indianapolis showing flashes, but Jacksonville just too much for the Colts. Tampa Bay over Minnesota at home. Minnesota was 5.5 point favorites at home to Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay ended up winning 20-17. Interesting side note about this game: Baker Mayfield, the quarterback for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, said that he was able to read the defensive signals from the Minnesota Vikings. So in the second half of that game, he said he knew exactly what they were calling, what coverages they were doing, and was just able to straight up beat them because he knew what was coming. On the other side, though, Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson looked like they were having world-like games in the first half, and then all of a sudden just did nothing. So I'm wondering if Mayfield also read the offensive signals and figured out what they were doing based on their lineups and was telling the defense what they were doing too. If so, all of a sudden, when did Baker Mayfield have psychic skills? But at the same time, it was discussed this week that like it is the job of backup quarterbacks to try to figure out what kind of signaling and what kind of defenses that teams are supposed to be using. But it looks like Baker just saw through whatever the Minnesota signal is. Going into this week, hopefully they change the signals. NFC looks like the New Orleans Saints 16-15 over the Tennessee Titans. New Orleans, with their new quarterback coming in from Las Vegas, they wanted to win bad, and Tennessee, their offense is bad. They only have the one running back who can run, but Tennessee just not looking good at all here, and New Orleans scraping by at home. Didn't cover, though. So if you had Tennessee +3 in that game, you were a winner. San Francisco 30-7 over Pittsburgh. San Francisco just crushed Pittsburgh. Their offense looked awful. And I don't know if that was a matter of San Francisco's defense being very, very good or Pittsburgh's offense being very, very bad. That's really up to you. They were home dogs this week. They were home dogs this week in week 1. They're home dogs again next week. So how they might have fallen there in Pittsburgh. Arizona falls to Washington 20-16. Washington was expected to romp in this game. They did anything but. They had to depend on their defense in the second half to make sure that they got past Arizona. Arizona's defense looking much better than a lot of people expected. Everybody thought this team was a tanking team, but nobody told the players for the Arizona Cardinals in this particular game. They played them tough for about 3.5 quarters until Washington was able to sort of pull away and go away from the Arizona Cardinals. Washington should be lucky that they did get this win as they go into Denver this week. Green Bay 38-20 over Chicago. Green Bay extending that winning streak over the Chicago Bears. Green Bay just owns them at this point. There's just nothing the Chicago Bears can do against the Green Bay Packers. I think overall, since the introduction of Brett Favre as a quarterback back in the 90s, Green Bay is something like 45-15 against the Chicago Bears. It's just awful. Chicago's offense unable to do anything. They were home dogs in this game, and Green Bay and their new quarterback Love was able to just put a number on them, and they were fantastic. So 38-20 there over the Chicago Bears. Philadelphia 25-20 over New England, able to scrape it off. Jalen Hurts seemed a little rusty there. A couple interceptions to the New England Patriots. Defense is their mantra, but it was not enough. New England's offense still looking a little shabby, only able to get 20 points. They needed a little more there from Mac Jones, but they will go into this week against Miami as dogs again. But New England there, the defense looking a little better, but Philadelphia, I think, just shaking off a little bit of the rust there and take the win. Las Vegas 17-16 over Denver. Denver looking like the Denver from last year. I don't think Sean Payton has got them fixed up yet. They do go down by a point. Vegas with Jimmy G able to just sort of pull it out. And this is a big matchup because this is rivals in the the AFC West, and they get one win over them. So that's huge for Las Vegas. Denver needs to knock off this rust. They do have a sort of iffy Washington coming in this week as the 425 game. But Sean Payton's got to figure it out. And Russell Wilson still not back up to Seattle standards at all. So I'm not exactly sure what's going there. And is he done? Is the real question in Denver. If they don't beat the Commanders, there's going to be a real question over the investment that Denver had in Russell Wilson and whether or not that should be reconsidered, let's say. Miami 36-34 over the Chargers in the high-scoring game, 70 here on the over-under. So I think the game itself is, in the high 50s. But, man, they went on a score fest. Both teams looking like they could move the ball. Defense, not so much. Miami had to win on a final touchdown there in the final 2 minutes to take it over the Chargers. And L.A., I think, is more of a Rams town. And honestly, the Rams did really well against Seattle 30-13. They go up to Seattle as a surprise, the Seahawks. I don't think they expected the Rams that showed up to play the way they did, as they were able to sort of shut down Seattle, who offense looking like the offense of old, but nothing really doing there in Seattle. So they've got to basically sort of wipe themselves clean and figure out what is going on there to see if they can get back to 1-1. Sunday night, Dallas Cowboys, we talked about it earlier, 40-0 over the Giants in a monsoon. Dallas really didn't have to do very much. They just sort of depended on Tony Pollard and sort of ran the ball and did what they needed to do. Giants looking like they weren't even interested in playing football, which was sort of awful. So, and then on Monday night, you had the Buffalo Bills versus the New York Jets. Jets win that one in an overtime, 22-16. In that particular case, everybody's sort of known exactly what happened to Aaron Rodgers. We didn't even bring it up because I think it's been covered enough here in the press. But poor guy tore his Achilles. Now the Jets will have to depend on Zach Wilson going into Dallas, but Jets sort of rallying on Monday night to make sure they got the win, but it was a Pyrrhic victory in the case that they lose Aaron Rodgers for the rest of the year and their Super Bowl hopes are pretty much in the toilet. I think everybody's agreed on that. So let's go over some definitions real quick, because for those who are not familiar with odds and how they work in betting, you'll see here the points. If you go by the points, if you have a negative associated to your team versus a positive, a negative means that you are the favorite and that people are picking you in favor of the other team. Underdogs will get more points in order for them to sort of even out the betting. The idea is that casinos want people to bet evenly between the two teams, but sometimes they're overwhelming favorites, and they will penalize them for being bet upon. So something like a -7 is a very, very strong favorite, whereas like you have an underdog, as much as 4 points can be very, very very, very bad for them, because that means they are a heavy underdog on teams. Just depends on the game, but anything you see in the double digits, it's favored way in one direction or another. So if a team is like +14 or something like that, there's no faith in that team from doing anything. You also have something called the over-unders, which is a combination of the two scores. So both teams will combine their scores and they'll give you a number. Casinos will then dictate that number beforehand. So for example, if the over-under is 51.5 and you go into that sort of Chargers-Miami game where both teams ended up scoring 70 points total, the over was the bet. It's an even money bet, so you can go either or. It's like playing red-black with regards to a roulette wheel, if you understand that a little bit, but it's trying to figure out whether or not both teams are going to have a good day or a bad day. And essentially, sometimes that number will be really low, sometimes that number will be really high because the casino expects a good day. But it is completely up to your field as to whether or not weather plays a huge part in this bet. So always if you are going to play the over/under, make sure you know exactly what it's going to be like. Are they playing in a dome? Is it grass? Is it turf? What type of conditions are we going to expect here? And that plays a lot into the over/under. Then you got your odds bets, which is a straight up bet on whether or not a team will lose, no points, anything like that. -400 means that they are a favorite, where you have to bet $100. You have to bet $400 to win 100. But a plus bet means that if you bet 100, you get whatever the plus number is. So for example, plus 225 means that for every 100 that you bet, you get $225. Now you want to figure out how much you bet using like $1, for example. -400 means that you would have to bet that you would need to bet, I think it's $4 to earn every dollar. And then if you bet $1 on a team that's plus 225, you would earn $2.25 for every dollar you bet. So that's how that pretty much works. So for those, I usually try to stay to those bets if I'm doing parlays. If you want to go with the points, that gives you more of an even money bet. It's usually about -110. So you gain just a little under even money, and then the even money bet also the over/under. So let's look at the week 2 schedule here on upcoming games. You've got Minnesota tonight here on Thursday. It will be Minnesota and Philadelphia, and Philadelphia's -6. Minnesota's they have a good offense, and they do have Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, but it's going to matter on whether or not they can get it ship in shape, and Philadelphia has a really great defense. I think Philadelphia -6 is the play. Sunday games at 1 o'clock. You got Green Bay at Atlanta. Atlanta home favorites here, 1.5. Early line here by BetMGM. I think that's Green Bay all the way. Atlanta's going to run the ball like crazy. Now, will their defense be able to stop them? I don't know, and I think Atlanta's getting the benefit of the doubt there. But I think you've got Love and Green Bay. I think they're looking good. I think Aaron, their running back on Green Bay, is going to be iffy because he did hurt his hamstring last week. So that might be the tipping factor on whether or not Green Bay can get the win or not. But Aaron Jones is going to be a game time decision, so they don't know whether or not he is going to play. But I'm thinking he's going to be out. He did not practice this week. So Atlanta here, -1.5, but I'm still going with Green Bay because I think they just have too many weapons. Las Vegas at Buffalo. Buffalo 8.5-point dogs here. Buffalo should be able to right the ship. Just got to make sure that, Josh Allen does not turn over the ball 4 times the way that he turned over the ball against the New York Jets. You can't win a game that way. Vegas The Buffalo Bills do have a pretty decent defense, and the Vegas offense still in its learning phases. So Jimmy G going into a rough spot there in Buffalo. I think that Buffalo will indeed cover the 8.5 point spread. Baltimore at Cincinnati. Cincinnati's 3.5 point favorite. Cincinnati didn't show up against Cleveland, so they're already 0-1 in the division. They could theoretically go 0-2 in the division. That would be catastrophic for their Super Bowl chances, because then they'd be looking up to the rest of the division. Baltimore looking good, but they did lose J.K. Dobbins, so their running game is going to be a little shortened. We still haven't seen what Lamar can do with the rest of those receivers, and they do have a new receiver core. So let's see if Baltimore can show up here. I'm gonna take the Ravens here, plus 3.5. I think they're gonna be good here versus Cincinnati. Cincinnati, notorious slow sorters. So there's an upset here that I'm picking. Seattle at Detroit. Detroit at home, minus 4.5. Detroit looked good against Kansas City, was able to shut them down, and their offense was pretty decent. They were the number 4, I think, offense overall in the NFL last year, and they are still on this continuous winning streak. I don't think that starts against Seattle. I think Detroit gets the win, but it will be closer than that 4.5 that mentions. But I think Detroit will indeed cover. Los Angeles Chargers at Tennessee. Tennessee plus 2.5 point dogs at home. Chargers here, I think, got this as long as their defense doesn't give up a ridiculous amount of points to Tennessee. But they will be playing at home. But home dogs for the Titans here as the Chargers come in. I think the Chargers get their first win of the season. Chicago at Tampa Bay. Baker Mayfield trying to go 2-0. Let's see if he can read the Chicago defense here. But this game's sort of a battle of ugh. So I would probably take Tampa Bay minus 2.5 here, because I think Baker Mayfield earned a lot of trust from his teammates here in that game, and they will be following him. And as long as he just doesn't throw it to the defensive safeties or the corners, I think Tampa Bay's got this. Kansas City at Jacksonville, plus 3.5. Jacksonville at home. This is the marquee matchup of the 1 o'clock games. You're looking at Kansas City trying to rebound. I think Travis Kelce will be playing in this game, as they held him out last week. They're already 0-1. They don't want to go 0-2. Jacksonville, coming off a win in Indianapolis, will have a decidedly harder choice here, a harder task here, trying to defeat Kansas City. But if nobody on Kansas City can catch a ball, Jacksonville will have a really good chance at winning this game. But I think the defense in Jacksonville is a little suspect compared to that of Detroit. So, but I think Jacksonville will be able to cover, assuming they can shut down Travis Kelce. Indianapolis at Houston is the final game in 1 o'clock. This is a battle of rookie quarterbacks. You've got your rookie from Ohio State versus your rookie from Florida. And the Indianapolis quarterback, he looked very, very good. He had some flashes there, but I think he's got to make sure he doesn't get the hits. And that's, I think, one of the things that Houston has a leg up on. He's more decidedly comfortable in the pocket, whereas the Indianapolis quarterback was running a lot. And this is a battle of second and first round, who's the second pick in the first round versus the fourth pick in the first round. So huge day for rookie quarterbacks in that game. So that one's a toss-up, folks. I don't know who to go with that. So hopefully you'll get a nice, fun, enjoyable, high-scoring game. 4 o'clock games are as follows. San Francisco at the LA Rams. The Rams, huge underdogs at home, 7.5. San Francisco like world beaters when they were playing Pittsburgh, and they go into LA, a division rival. This is going to be a lot closer than you think. Rams looked good at Seattle last week, and they'll probably play exactly the same. They'll look good this week, but San Francisco defense, much, much tougher, I think, than Seattle's. I think San Francisco State's win, but it might be closer than that 7.5. So you might want to see if you want to sneak in about a couple bucks there on San Francisco, LA plus 7.5, because it might be just enough. Giants at Arizona. This is basically a team, the Giants, who were reeling after their Sunday night performance that looked awful. Arizona's defense much better than you think against the Commanders, and pretty much held them at bay for about 3 quarters or so until the Washington defense decided to turn around and score points on their own and make short fields for the offense so that Arizona couldn't really do anything about it. I think the Giants rebound. I think Arizona goes home, but I think the Giants need to win this game, and they need to win it badly. Jets at Dallas. That's your marquee 4 p.m. game, but it's Zach Wilson. We wanted to see Aaron Rodgers. That's not going to happen. Dallas looked like world beaters against the Giants, who were not prepared to play that night. They are. This is their home opener, and Dallas at -9 here, even bigger than the Buffalo -8.5. That is just such a big gap, and the Jets' offense they look lost without Aaron Rodgers, I think. And they will need to have a really huge defensive showing against the Dallas Cowboys to keep it close. Dallas, I think, wins this game and is going to cover. Washington and Denver. Denver 3.5 favorites at home. It really just depends on which Russell Wilson shows up. Is it the Russell Wilson that's been playing in Denver for about a year now, or is it the Russell Wilson from Seattle? I'm thinking it's the Russell Wilson that's been in Denver. I don't know if he's adapting to Sean Payton's scheme well enough. Washington just needs to get better on offense, a little bit more balance, more Brian Robinson, less Antonio Gibson up the gut, I think is what they need to do. Robinson's more of a sort of a pattern runner. You need to give him the ball 15 to 20 times, make sure that he gets into a groove, and then that'll open up stuff for Sam Howell. I think Washington wins here. Bet them plus 3.5. Sunday night, you got Miami at New England. Miami's high-powered offense against the New England defense here. I think because it's early in the season and not in November, I think Miami's got the edge here. New England reeling after that loss last week to Philadelphia because they thought they were close, but they just weren't. And then this being a division rival, they're going to play up for this game, but I think it's Miami who ends up taking it. Monday night, you got two games. You got New Orleans at Carolina and Cleveland at Pittsburgh. Not really exciting games when you really think about it. Pittsburgh, a dog at home to Cleveland, which is very surprising. Pittsburgh's got to have a better showing, and I think they will against the Cleveland Browns, whereas New Orleans and Carolina, New Orleans here looking to go 2-0 in the NFC South, and Carolina working, Bryce Young, who is their new quarterback, just has to get a handle of what's going on in Carolina. They did not look good in Atlanta, only scoring 10 points. Hopefully they'll be able to do a little bit more here against a division rival in New Orleans, but I don't think so. I think it's New Orleans who will overcome them, and you should take them -3. So let's look at the picks here. My solid picks for the weekend. I'm going Green Bay plus 1.5, Baltimore plus 3.5, Jacksonville plus 3.5, and Washington plus 3.5. Go with Dallas -9 and Miami -3. I think those are your solid picks. I'm going to be parlaying them, and hopefully I get all 6 of them right. And if I do, yay for me. But remember, all the advice that I give you here on this show is only for entertainment purposes. We don't guarantee everything. This is just for fun. But hopefully this will play into a part in what you do this weekend, and I hope you enjoy all those games. We'll see you at the beginning of week 3 next Thursday, but in the meantime, have fun and enjoy week 2 of the NFL.